I would like to just hopefully plant a seed and get you to think in a slightly different way. Today, my topic that I'm going to be speaking on is modern selection aids to increase profitability. Before I do that, I just want to paint a little bit of a picture of what's happening within the global industry and what we expect to happen in the global industry in terms of climate change. The first thing I'm going to touch on is the expected effects of climate change on feed production. If you look here in the dark red and the red bars, those are the expected negative effects that we think we're going to see from climate change. And the largest negative effects that we expect to see are on pasture productivity, feed availability, the grazing and growing season, roughage yield, and then feed and forage quality. The reason I brought this up, being beef producers, we are converters of grass to beef. So obviously this has a direct impact on animal production for us as well. The next thing I want to highlight is just the expected effects of climate change on animal production. And once again, if you look at the dark orange and the red bars, we expect to see the most negative effects on growth performance, reproduction performance, and animal welfare due to heat stress of animals. So in saying that, now that I've painted a little bit of a picture, I just want to clarify in terms of profit and factors that affect profitability, depending on your production system, those factors are going to be slightly different. People are farming in different regions with different target markets. The factors that affect your profitability will be different depending on where you are. Another thing that I would just like to highlight is that when it comes to profit in terms of genetic progress, it is not something that happens overnight. It requires a lot of foresight, a good understanding of both the internal and external factors that affect profitability on your production system. But as a whole, these factors can generally be summarized into three main categories. The first one, reproduction efficiency, production efficiency, and sustainability. When it comes to reproduction efficiency, this places emphasis on more calves and on traits, on factors such as fertility, gestation length, reproductive herd life, and in terms of nutrition and health and animal body condition. But today I'm just going to focus on the genetic aspects. When it comes to production efficiency, our focus is on producing more beef. These include traits such as growth, feed efficiency. I know that there's going to be some talks on feed efficiency today as well, and carcass characteristics. Depending on what production system you're working in, whether you have a weaner system where you're selling animals at 200 days or a long weaner system where you're selling animals at 400 days, your focus might be slightly different within that category. And then the last factor affecting profit, I'm going to talk about sustainability, producing more beef and more calves cheaply. This focuses on a medium-framed, feed-efficient cow herd. Large-framed animals tend to have a higher energy maintenance requirement, which is why we strive to produce a medium-framed animal. Knowing that, very important that we are able to set a breed objective. So the reason that we set a breed objective, we want to obviously increase profit while decreasing our input costs. So we want to try and set a breed objective with different profit drivers that have relative economic importance to your production system. And fortunately for us in the stud breeding industry, we are actually given a tool for that. Through performance recording and submitting of data to the societies, we get EBVs calculated for us. And this is our strongest measure, and it's a very valuable tool that we can use as a selection criteria within our breed objectives. Breaking it down into each of those profit categories, EBVs for selection criteria within reproduction efficiency include days to calving, gestation length, and scrotal circumference as a proxy for fertility of bulls' daughters and age at puberty. Production efficiency, our focuses are on our growth traits being 200 days, 400 days, or 600-day EBVs. Rib, rump fat, intramuscular fat, and arm muscle area. If we receive a premium for carcass characteristics, then we can place emphasis on those EBVs. And then lastly, net feed intake. Currently, we don't receive a net feed intake EBVs, but we will be within this year. And it's a very, very useful tool when assessing it with your growth EBVs as well. Then for sustainability, there's mature cow weight. As I've mentioned, mature cow weight is an indicator of the energy required for maintenance of the mature cow and your breeding herd. Heavier cows having a higher maintenance requirement. What's also important to note there is this is quite strongly related to your stocking rate as well. If you have more medium-framed animals, you can increase your stocking rate, and you then have the potential to produce and wean more calves. So these are some of the EBVs that we can use within our breed objective. And I think the key word here before setting up any breed objectives is balance. All of these EBVs we need to include a balanced set of EBVs within our breed objective, because by chasing single trait outliers, we often see unwanted correlated responses in traits. For example, by placing a lot of emphasis on 200-day weight, chasing the heaviest 200-day weights the whole time, we end up with heavier birth weights, more calving problems, and at the end of the day, a lot of the time, high mature cow weights as well. Those growth traits are quite highly correlated. So as I've mentioned now, EBVs in the stud industry are a perfect tool that we can use within our breed objectives to manage profit. And within each of those categories, although they are integrated, we can apply selection pressure within each of those categories and monitor the genetic progress that we're making within that to manage our profit. Professor Michiel Scholz from the Agricultural Research Center in South Africa speaks of climate-smart breed objectives. And I think it's a really nice catchphrase and something that we need to be aware of, and that's part of the reason I outlined the expected changes the changes that we expect to see due to climate change. And I think we need to be setting up our breed objectives around that. And three factors, he speaks of three components that make up cow efficiency, being fertility being one of them, the weight of the calf being the other, and then the weight of the cow being the third one. And that ties really well into those profit factors that I spoke about. Reproduction efficiency focuses on fertility, production efficiency focuses on the weight of the calf, and sustainability focuses on mature cow weight and the cost of the cow. Which is why I've chosen just a few EBVs just to support those 3 points. The first one I'm going to speak about is days to calving. Days to calving is a very good measure of fertility, and it also acts as a proxy for adaptability. Animals that are able to reproduce and produce a calf in an extensive environment annually are considered to be well adapted. So this is a very, very useful EBV and something that I think should be included in everybody's breed objective. Days to calving is defined as the bull-in date to the date that the calf is born. In that amount of time, the cow needs to cycle, be mated, conceive, gestate the pregnancy, and give birth. So there's a lot of facets of reproduction that are included within this EBV, which is, again, why it's such a nice indicator of fertility. The largest variation we see within this EBV is from the date that the bull goes in to the date that cow conceives. And obviously, the quicker that cow takes to the bull, the more fertile she's considered. And at the same time, it can be a measure of the bull's fertility as well, and I'll get to that point now.
For cardless transactions, in a heartbeat, it's time to discover PayPulse. With PayPulse, you can use your phone to pay anyone in Namibia for anything at any time. Send money to friends, family, whoever you like, even if they don't have the PayPulse app. Top up your prepaid airtime and load up more electricity. Want to pay your bills without leaving the couch? PayPulse has got you covered. How about depositing or withdrawing cash, paying at the shops, or settling the bill at a restaurant? Yep, with PayPulse, you can do it all. Once you have the app, you can link any card from any bank and enjoy unbeatable security through every step of registration and payment. Fast, secure, and easy to use. It's the most convenient way to pay. To get your finger on the pulse, visit paypulse.na.
Interestingly, in a study done by Johnson and Moore in 2019, they noted that there was a high correlation with days to calving and calving success, where for every 1 day increase in days to calving, so for every, when I speak about 1 day increase, in this instance, a negative days to calving is good, so a shorter days to calving. In other words, that cow conceived earlier after being exposed to the bull. So for every day increase in that, there was a 1.1 unit increase in calving success, in calving percentage. This study was done on Brahmins in Australia, and for those of us farming with Simra, it is likely relative to us being a Brahmin synthetic. Also interestingly, done by, that's the same person, by Johnston in 2017, he found that there was a correlation between days to calving and the percentage of normal sperm observed in bulls. Animals that had a shorter days to calving tended to have a higher percentage of normal sperm. And that goes back to this little graph over here. Bulls that are more fertile and have covered a female, if they have a higher percentage of normal functional sperm, are most likely then to have a successful conception out of that. So that's how that can translate to the bulls as well. Also, interestingly, there was a slight correlation between days to calving and larger scrotal circumference. Scrotal circumference, as I've just mentioned, is used as an indicator trait for fertility, whereby bulls with a larger scrotal circumference tend to produce daughters that reach puberty earlier, which is also a good indicator of fertility as well. Then, when it comes to production efficiency, as I mentioned, with the whole climate, the expected effects of climate change, increasing temperatures, we expect to see more heat stress on the animals, and to reduce that, they tend to eat less so that the biological heat load or the latent heat load within the animal is not as high, and that reduces the heat stress on the animals. And then grazing times. We expect cattle to graze in the cooler parts of the day and not in the hotter parts of the day, again to just reduce that biological heat load on the animals. In a study done in foal hearts by the ARC as well, it's actually an ongoing study, so that the results haven't been published yet, but I received this through personal communication. 42% of the variation that they saw in weaning weight came from a 3-degree increase in temperature. So with that being said, at the end of the day, we still need to produce a heavy calf off of felt. And to do that, we still need to have animals that are able to put on weight efficiently despite the expected changes in grazing patterns, increases in temperature, and things like that. And for us, our EBVs that we can use to manage that are 200 days, 400 days, and 600-day EBVs. And depending on your production system, you might have a slight difference. If you are in the market of producing yearlings, you might place a bit more emphasis on 400-day EBVs. If you are in the market to produce heavy steers, then you might focus on place a bit more emphasis on a 600-day EBV. When it comes to growth EBVs, it's very important to manage these carefully. They are highly correlated with each other. 400 and mature cow weight have almost an 80% correlation with each other. So by chasing heavy 400-day weights, we expect to see heavy mature cow weights. So here, balance is key. Very, very important to have a balanced set of growth EBVs, and that you're not chasing outliers, because those indirect effects that we see from that, being heavy birth weights, increased calving problems, will all affect your profitability. Fortunately for us, we can identify curve benders. Curve benders are animals that they don't follow the expected growth curves that we usually see. To illustrate this here, I'm not sure how clearly you can see it, but this is birth weight over here. This animal has a birth weight below the breed average and a good growth above the breed average, and then it stabilizes when it comes to 400, 600 and mature cow weight, where 600 and mature cow weight are just above the breed average. So we expect to see, in the progeny, we expect to see good growth up to 200, good growth up to 400, and then it sort of stabilizes over there. So we see most of the growth earlier on, smaller, and we expect to see then a smaller framed animal, a smaller framed cow at the end of it, and a lower maintenance requirement.
The reward for a lifetime of dedication goes beyond money and the expectations of others. We aim to serve our community and actively participate in the development of our industry. Agra, a better life.
As I mentioned as well, when it comes to production efficiency, two things that go hand in hand: growth, net feed intake. Net feed intake helps us to identify animals that eat less per day at a standard weight and rate of gain. In other words, these are the more cost-effective animals. To put on 1 kilogram of mass, they eat less feed to do that than their contemporaries. Animals with a lower net feed intake can produce up to 30% less methane and consume up to 12% less feed than higher net feed intake animals. When I spoke about the heat load and the heat stress on the animals that have a better net feed intake as well tend to produce less heat in the digestive process and are also considered to be more adaptable because they are not as predisposed to the effects of heat stress as well. The last thing I'm going to speak about is the sustainability. I don't know how clearly you can see this graph, but this is taken from the nutrient requirements in a study done by the University of Arkansas. And it works out the monthly cost per cow to maintain a moderate body condition and be able to produce 9 liters of milk at peak yield off the veld. If you look over here, this orange bar is from a heavier cow weighing 589 kilograms, and this blue line over here is from a lighter cow weighing 545 kilograms. The numbers might seem quite arbitrary, but I converted pounds to kilograms. But if you look at the cost per month, so from calving, this is the first month after calving. So essentially, this is a lactation curve. And the cost of this cow to raise a calf up until weaning. At the start of lactation, the heavier cow, on average, costs about 350 Rand a month to maintain. There's a 20 Rand difference between a 45 kilogram difference in cow in terms of maintenance requirement. This is essentially, as I said, just the time that the cow has a calf at foot. So this is up until the end of 6 months. We generally wean our calves at 200 days, around 7 months. The total cost to get that cow through lactation to produce a calf is, for a 545 kilogram cow, approximately 2,000 Rand, and for a 589 kilogram cow, approximately 2,115 Rand. This is a calculation done purely off of veld, no supplemental feed, and only for the 6 months of the year that cow has a calf at foot. If you have 100 larger animals, giving them supplemental feed, you can imagine that number gets quite large. Remembering you still have to feed that cow for the other 6 months of the year as well, while she doesn't have a calf at foot. To summarize what I've had to say, there are no hard and fast rules when it comes to maximizing profit. Set a climate-smart breed objective that contains a combination of balanced EBVs that fit your production system and target market. Keyword here again, balanced. Don't place overemphasis on certain traits. You are likely to see correlated responses within other traits as well. I only highlighted some examples that you can use. Depending on your production system, you might include a different set of EBVs. You might have some carcass characteristics in there. So you need to take the time to research and understand the EBVs and their relationships before setting up your breed objective. Lastly, with a good understanding and correct application, EBVs can be used as a selection aid that can unlock profit potential within your production system. Thank you.